I remember them making fun of me because I'm eating a bowl of cereal and I'm crying because I don't want to use the bathroom because I've somehow contrived in my mind I'm sinning against God if I go to the bathroom without my dad's permission. So I've got a full bladder, tears in my eyes, family making fun of me, a frustrated dad. Just go to the bathroom. Remember this? Just go to the bathroom. You don't have to ask. But you don't understand the way my mind worked is that I did not want to go to hell. Maybe that's the underlying fear.
Every day you are making your brain better or you are making it worse. Stay with us to learn how you can change your brain for the better every day. In this week's episode of the Change Your Brain Everyday podcast, I am joined by musician Daniel Gokey. Daniel was the third place finalist on the 8th season of American Idol. Daniel and I discuss his battle with scrupulosity. Scrupulosity is a subtype of obsessive compulsive disorder involving religious or moral obsessions. This part of Daniel's life has never been shared before publicly. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Are you struggling with anxiety, depression, obsessive thinking, past emotional trauma, ADHD, or brain fog and don't know where to turn? Are your relationships a mess and you don't know why? Have you had a brain injury, concussion, or just don't feel the same after COVID? Is your memory worse than it was 10 years ago? Or do you have a parent or grandparent with dementia and want to work on prevention? Yes, prevention is possible, but the sooner you start, the better. For 35 years, we've been changing people's brains and their lives using brain SPECT imaging and a personalized, natural approach to brain and mental health care. And we have some of the best published outcomes anywhere. Go to amenclinics.com to learn more. And when you call us, mention Podcast 10 for a 10% discount. The big idea is with a better brain, everything in your life is better.
Okay.
And you have tried to get help.
Yeah.
But no one's looked at your brain.
Nobody.
And if you don't look at the brain, you're flying blind.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of not okay with that. And as much as you've suffered, you've actually not gotten great help.
No.
So I read your history. Okay. Thank you for doing that. I looked at your checklist. Thank you for doing that. Yeah. I looked at your testing. I've looked at your scans. I have a good idea what's going on.
Do you? Because I got confused through all of it.
And we've actually never done a show on scrupulous OCD.
Yep.
And
I didn't know that, but
yours fits that.
Yeah.
But it's like, well, why do you have this? And I want to hear from you, your goals. That's always the first thing I'm really interested in.
Okay, so my goals are to just have a healthier me, personally. I don't think I realized till I was in my 40s that a lot of this is unhealthy because my coping mechanisms went so far deep that I didn't realize they were coping mechanisms. These things I went to get out of my, my falls when I felt like I was falling and I couldn't get out of the darkness. But so now it's to get me to a healthier place, of course, but also to recognize it in my children, because this is something that wasn't talked about at all. And I think it could have been talked about in my family because I think there's other people suffering with it and kind of made their way through it. I just suffered with it for a very long time.
Okay. So hope, healing.
Yeah.
And then helping your family.
Yeah, my kids especially. Because I feel like I've noticed some of the things already in them that I went through as a kid that I didn't tell anybody.
Like what?
So scrupulosity is a religious type of OCD. So being raised in a really fundamental, very, my grandfather got saved at 40, became a Christian at 40. I mean, he started a church. We started going to that church, but it was a very strict church. And maybe if I were to say this probably to my family, I think I've talked to my dad about this, and my dad's like, no, we weren't that way. So there's one way that I've walked away from that. Maybe it was just how I receive things, right? I think I've come to learn in my 40s that maybe they weren't strict. Maybe just my receptors and my perspective of what they were teaching just hit me in a certain way where I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna go to hell if I sin. I better get this act together, right? So part of the OCD that started is I couldn't control my thoughts. So I'd have very horrible, terrible thoughts against God, against Jesus. And that freaked me out because instead of just letting a thought pass through me, all of a sudden the thought was there and something's wrong with me, even though I didn't want this thought. And so that's where the downward spiral started in my life, but I wouldn't tell a single soul. And I remember having a dream as a kid where I remember in the dream, I told my dad, like, Dad, these thoughts are in my brain. I don't want them. Like thoughts were like, F God, F Jesus. I mean, as kids, I don't even like saying that, because this has affected me so much. And I remember in my dream, my dad was like, you cannot think that way, that you're going to hell. And of course that wouldn't have been my dad's response had I told him. But anyways,
But it was your brain's response.
It was my brain response. And so now the question was, how am I recognizing my kids? A couple of years ago, I noticed my son, my oldest son, he must have been around 7 years old. I heard him say, shut up, something. I just heard him say, shut up. And he was sharing a room with his brother Gabriel at the time. And his brother Gabriel would have been about 3 years old. I go, Danny, what'd you say? And he got real timid. Danny, what'd you say? I walked back to his room while he's in bed. He said, I said, shut up, devil. I go, oh, what? I recognize right away. He goes, Daddy, I get these thoughts in my head. Stupid God, stupid God, stupid God. It won't stop. And immediately he was 6 or 7, I was able to tell him, Danny, those are not your thoughts. Number one, there's nothing wrong with you. I used to struggle with that when but I didn't get too much into my story. I was like, you need to know that there's nothing wrong with you. And when those thoughts come, you don't have to fight them, just let them pass right through. But for me as a kid, it meant so much because something was wrong with me. I needed to fix that. And that's where the OCD and the coping and the rituals started with, like, overwashing my hands, sitting up straight. I remember if a teacher, I would follow laws. If a teacher said you got to shut up straight because your back, it's good for your back, that was a law. And if I didn't do that, that was a sin against God. And so I had back pain as a kid, scabs all over my hands. I couldn't even use the bathroom. I remember my dad got frustrated with me. I'm laughing now, but it wasn't funny at the time because I couldn't even use the bathroom without my dad's permission. I remember my dad said, wash your hands before you eat. If I touched my lip while putting the chip in my mouth, that means my lip wasn't washed. I need to go back, wash my hands, and that's how I got scabs. There is a thought process I'm spitballing right here, but there's a thought process that goes along with why this could be a sin and how I better avoid it. I remember my sisters, I have 4 sisters and a brother. I remember them making fun of me because I'm eating a bowl of cereal and I'm crying because I don't want to use the bathroom because I've somehow contrived in my mind I'm sinning against God if I go to the bathroom without my dad's permission. So I've got a full bladder, tears in my eyes, family making fun of me, a frustrated dad. Just go to the bathroom. Remember this? Just go to the bathroom. You don't have to ask, but you don't understand the way my mind worked is that I did not want to go to hell. Maybe that's the underlying fear.
So when did that start? Do you remember?
I think as low as 6 years old. I remember as a young kid, this is so weird. I don't know why this was a thing, but maybe 5 or 4 years old, I would start betting God on things. I bet God that I can kick that soccer ball to that. I don't know. As weird as that sounds, there's a connection right there. And then I remember playing soccer around 7 or 8 years old and starting to think, like, Lord, if you don't hold the universe together, if you mess up, and I remember having this conversation with God, playing soccer. If you sin, we're all screwed. We're all screwed. Don't sin. Don't mess this world up. As I processed talking with you, it was just fear after fear after fear after fear.
And you're saying if you sin.
Yeah, because first we're all going to hell already. But if you sin, you can't even save us.
Oh, if God sins.
God, if you sin.
That's so interesting.
My brain went to just weird.
Thinking about that at such a young age.
I don't know why.
And in my head, I'm going, I wonder what his temporal lobes look like. Because that's where a lot of religiosity comes from.
I don't even know what that is.
So the temporal lobes are underneath your temples, behind your eyes. Okay. They're on each side. And there's a researcher in Canada, Michael Persinger,
And when he stimulates the outside of your right temporal lobe, people have a sensed presence. They feel the presence of God in the room. So if God's going to communicate with us, there's going to be a neuroscience pathway for that to happen. But sometimes if that's busy, that I've seen this a lot in little kids. It's like you're 6 and you're worried about going to hell. Now, if you had my mother, she told me, I think I told a lie or not. Anyways, when I was 6, she started crying and said, I never thought I was going to have a son who was going to hell. So
Your mom said that?
if I had your brain, that would have just messed me up. Probably already messed me up. So this started early.
I stayed home from school sick about a week. I must have been maybe 10 or 11 years old because I was so scared I was going to hell. I got physically sick. I didn't tell anyone. I just buried myself in my sheets. And this is like a pervading thought throughout my whole life, was that fear. And I thought I overcame it, but it would trickle up in other different areas. And so for most scrupulosity and OCDers, blasphemy of the Holy Spirit is the fear. And that was the fear when I was a kid. I've committed the unpardonable sin. I can't go to heaven. Which was? Blasphemy of the Holy Spirit. Just don't have an understanding of it, but.
Because you had those.
Blasphemous thoughts.
Almost like Tourette thoughts.
Yeah, definitely like Tourette thoughts. On a wheel. When my 6-year-old son said stupid God was on a wheel, boy, I could relate to that. It just won't stop. Just F God.
So it's like a little mouse on an exercise wheel.
Yeah.
And it can't get off.
Yeah. And so I think it might.
And nobody noticed this, or it sounds like they did. Like
I think people noticed, but with this, I don't think they did. I mean, I'm sitting up straight to the point of back pain. I can't go use the bathroom. Now remember, these are seasons in my life. I hyperventilating. I remember one time I would have anxiety attacks and the doctor said, breathe into a paper bag. I don't know what that does, but I remember being pulled out of classroom. If I'd have an anxiety attack in class and breathing into a bag, it's really hard to explain. Maybe I didn't tell anyone. You just kind of seal it up, shut it away because you're ashamed. You're full of shame and you're embarrassed. That's a huge thing. I don't want people seeing my flaws because will they accept me?
Okay. So intrusive thoughts.
Oh, yeah.
What kind of compulsive behaviors did you have?
Well,
you talked about washing your hands to the point where you had scabs.
Yeah. This is going to there's probably a whole plethora of people that listen to this podcast. So some are going to understand this, some won't. In the faith, I always had this fear for years of God leaving me. So some of the coping mechanisms were like, open up the Bible to a verse and just God speak to me in this moment. You know what I'm saying? If that didn't happen, he's left me. It's always a fear of God leaving me. I need a prophetic word. I need a visitation from God. I need, it's some hyper spiritual thing to happen to bring assurance. So people who struggle with OCD and religious OCDs, they need assurance nonstop. God, are you with me? God, are you here? I feel like I'm abandoned by you. And if I felt like I was abandoned by God, you want to talk about a spiral out and go into a deep place of depression. I mean, it's happened more times than I can count. Because you just don't have a grasp you don't have a solid foundation to stand on. So therefore you're doing some really weird things to get that assurance.
So as I looked at your history, these seem to be the important things to me. The first time you tried to get help, you were in your 30s?
I told someone, a youth pastor at 20 years old, what I was going through because it got me to a point at 20 years old. So I was able to conquer it by the grace of God. Like something happened in my life, this thing that happened with God that just really kind of cleared it all up. And I got into a really good place. And then around 20 years old, it kind of the door opened back up through, I think, some painful, traumatic events that happened. It opened back up. And then I left my hometown at 20 years old, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I went to Minneapolis to live with a youth pastor and his wife that were really influential on me. And I remember telling him, finally just letting it out, like, this is what I've gone through my whole life. I've never told a soul at 20 years old. I told him, he didn't know what to do about it. He had never heard of it. At that point, I'm not telling a single person after this. I just literally laid out the depths of who I was to who you are. You didn't have an answer. I thought maybe if I got this out that I'd get an answer and I'd feel better. Didn't get better. So I sealed up like a vault again. And I remember I got married at 24. I moved back to Wisconsin, got married at 24. And I remember on my wedding day, one of the thoughts that sticks out is I remember just sitting at the wedding table and just telling myself, my wife has no idea who I am. I'm a horrible person. I'm a blasphemer. I've committed the unpardonable sin. She doesn't know this. Now, mind you, everything else was, I loved the Lord. I was at church. I was a worship leader. I was serving. I had no desire to want to blaspheme God, but you have these thoughts, right? And so you hide these thoughts that are on these cycles at times, thoughts that would make me go and I'd drop her off at home and I go vomit in a parking lot because I'm so stressed out. I'm so stressed out. Like these thoughts are on wheels again. You know what I'm saying? Anyways, then she passes away. That's another traumatic event that happens in my life. So
I want to hear about that. I call these thoughts ants, automatic negative thoughts, the thoughts that come into your mind automatically and ruin your day. And it becomes an infestation. And so you need an anteater in your head to just hunt them down and move them out or turn them into protein. And there's nowhere in school that teaches you to manage the nonsense in your head.
No.
Isn't that crazy?
It is. And I even think in my case, I don't know if because I made agreements with it, every time the thoughts would happen and I would try to fight back, that they just got they got stronger.
Yeah, but no, that's an undisciplined, fearful mind. If you write them down and then correct them, I'll show you how.
Okay.
Over time, they go away. Or if they become like the weather. And there's a storm, but you let it pass. They have developed grooves in your brain or ruts in your brain. And the more you're afraid of them, the stronger they become.
Now that makes sense to me.
We'll work on this. This is really important. And a good OCD therapist should have helped you become masterful at killing the ants.
It's interesting though, these things aren't much of a thing anymore. I feel like it's shifted now that I'm 44 years old. It's shifted over to it's I don't even know how to explain it. There's just maybe other obsessions now. You know what I'm saying? It's turned into, because I was able to make some really big strides in my 20s and 30s and getting them out. At 33, I finally told my wife passes away. That's a whole story in itself, but I get remarried. And finally at 33, I share with my wife and my manager what was going on. They just I told them I had this deep, dark secret that I've never really told anybody. And when I told them, I think they just thought I say this, I don't say this flippantly, but they literally thought I was maybe being a child molester. And I told them I have these, and I was no, I have these thoughts. So they kind of laughed it off, oh my gosh, you're okay. But in my head, I'm I'm not okay. It's interesting, the dichotomy that when I went and shared that with them, they thought it was something else, but they don't understand my whole life. This was so important to me, how I thought about God, how I view God. Am I accepted by God? So telling people has not been the strongest answer. I did go see some therapies and some therapists. I feel like nobody ever had an answer. And I don't want to blame them. Could it have been me? Like I said before in the beginning of this podcast.
Did anybody look at your brain?
No. And that's the difference. But maybe it's my perspective.
So we have part of the answer. We have part of the answer. And you did some intense therapy and you said that was helpful.
Yeah, I've done I did intensive not too long ago, just because I noticed that I think all through the years of all that emotion is caught up with me, and it's in my, what that book, The Body Keeps a Score. I think now I am reaping what has been sowed all those years. Right now, I think one of my most difficult dispositions is my emotions, because I've gone through so much hurt, because I've gone through so much pain, so much anxiety. I mean, tries to live in anxiety, unhealthy anxiety. And on top of that, I'm a Christian singer. So you're supposed to be this hopeful person giving a message of hope and a message of Christ. But then on the inside, you're falling apart, you know? And that's almost like, what do they call it? A dissonance? That's not good.
Yeah, except everybody suffers.
Yeah.
Right. I tried to do a study on normal people. It was so hard to find. It was so hard. We screened 3,000 people to find 128 normal people. And this was our definition of normal. You never had a psychiatric illness, not a substance abuser, didn't have a head injury, you're not on any medicine, you don't have a first-degree relative, mother, father, sibling, or child with a psychiatric illness.
Wow.
Normal is the city in Illinois or the setting on a dryer. You're normal, right? More than 50% of the population will have a psychiatric illness at some point in their life. So welcome to normal. Now, it's not helpful or optimal for you because it's created a lot of suffering. But I used to get this thought in my head when I was a young psychiatrist that if I think you're really awesome and you're normal and I want to get to know you. If I had that thought, within 3 weeks, they would be in my office telling me about their disastrous marriage, telling me about the nightmares, telling me about their molestation. I'm like, it's just the human condition. It's part of why Jesus died for us, because we have all fallen short of the glory of God.
Yeah.
So, all right. Sometimes you take lorazepam if you're really feeling anxious. How often does that happen?
I mean, it's like the last ditch effort. I think I have a bottle from a year and a half ago with only 30 pills in it that still has probably about 15 in it.
Okay. So not often.
But let me tell you, I probably should have. Here's the thing. I'm a doer, religious, got to fix myself, white knuckle my way through.
Well, why don't we fix you without that?
Okay, that sounds good.
That's addictive and can mess with your memory.
I like that.
Yeah. Would not be on the top of my list. I mean, maybe 12th, but not in the top 10.
Okay.
Melatonin, magnesium, help you sleep.
Yep.
DHT blocker. Why?
Just try not to lose my hair.
Okay. That's what we thought. Multiple vitamin, fish oil, turmeric.
Yes.
Theanine. Does theanine help?
I don't know. I got desperate when I'm in a painful situation. If things are hurting inside, I'll just go to a Whole Foods or something like that and just, what's good for the brain? That's exactly what I go to for the aisle. What's good for the brain? Because it's just little temporary
things. Will be a little more targeted for you than Whole Foods.
Okay.
You filled out the checklist. Thank you. These are the ones I sort of look at and think are important. Some depression. Sleep's not awesome. Feeling worthless, helpless, hopeless, guilty. Easily distracted, panic attacks, get stuck, worry, some compulsive behaviors, experiencing recurring and upsetting thoughts about a past traumatic event. What would that be?
I think going back to this, and people might not understand this, when you think that you've committed the unpardonable sin, there are people who are in mental hospitals because of that. Because they feel like that God is excommunicated.
We're going to target that specific thought.
But that was the thought that has driven me through many depressions, many sleepless nights, many worrisome days, as much as I can tell you is, am I okay with God? Now, on this side, I will tell you I am. I believe I am because of what Jesus did on the cross. But all those years of that has left a residue of, I thought there was times I just wasn't going to make it. I went through something a year and a half ago that made, once again, triggered something on the inside of me that made me feel like maybe God's not with me. And it set me down a rabbit hole so deep. This is 2023. We're 2025 now, but 2023 this happened. And I thought I was good. I thought I was out. I thought I was clean. I'd making some good strides. And to the point where, I mean, it was like, I was having breakdowns. I could barely make it. I'm on tour and I could barely make it sometimes. Anyways.
Yeah, you have episodes of depression that are
Without a
really
doubt.
clear.
But I feel like it's deep in my tissue.
You've never taken an antidepressant, which I find frustrating.
Well, because I actually did go see a psychologist and I cried the whole time. This was 2018. I cried. My wife, usually, you need to do this. Like, kind of made me like making a deal with me. Like, I can't, you need to be here for the kids. We need you. Like, I can't carry all this weight. But I just, in that situation, I'm broken and unfixable. That's the only thing I could think about in that psychologist. And then the psychologist, I'm just gonna say this. It was just, I felt like a number. And could be my perspective. Don't want to cast, I'm just learning my perspective at time might be skewed, which is why I'm in the emotional state that I've been in and am. I can't sit there and just point the finger at people because maybe people were well-intended. Maybe she was. I didn't get a little care at that time and I didn't get the care that I wanted from her. But I totally, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, I totally believe a lot of my issues have been self-inflicted, have been self-caused. This is not me shaming myself, has been just didn't know how to deal with things. And so I went to a very fear mode instead of just a love mode. I'm accepted, I'm okay. You know what I mean?
Well, there's another choice in there, which is your brain was overfiring.
Yeah.
And that wasn't a choice.
Yeah, it wasn't a choice.
On your side. It's like you have a heart arrhythmia and you're like, stop it. It's like, you can't.
Yeah. And then with my wife passing away, that also was another thing.
So what happened with that? Tell me.
So got married, met her at church, 17 years old. She was 16 and she had a heart condition, born with it. We prayed and believed that God was going to heal her. She had a surgery when she was born. It's called tricuspid atresia. Surgery when she was born. When I met her.
So for people who don't know that means one of her heart valves didn't develop.
Right. So they had a surgery right away to make sure they can get oxygen to her heart. And so when I met her, they have that little zipper scar. They call it a zipper. I forget what the technical term, but it's known as a zipper. I met her at church. You see a scar. Oh, the doctor's fixed you. You're okay. Well, first year of marriage, we dated for 6 years. I was 24. Yeah, I was 25 at the time, and she's 24. Her heart's beating out of her chest, just walking upstairs. And we take her to the hospital. We have to have another surgery. Very long story short, we're believing God that you're going to heal her. You're going to do a miracle. God, we need you. She ends up, the first surgery goes wrong, has to get on an artificial heart on a transplant list. In 2-week period, we're praying, believing God. She passes away. And once again, it triggered me into a place, God has abandoned me.
It's so traumatic.
God didn't hear my prayers.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, thank you, I should say.
Because you see God heal some people and not others. And that's confusing.
At that time it was. I mean, I
went to Oral Roberts University.
Oh, no way.
So Oral was faith healer.
He was the faith healer. I mean, these are people of the faith who went on and did great things.
But not everybody was healed, and God uses doctors to heal people. And still, people go to the next place.
Yeah.
Right? So, and if you have faith, you believe this isn't it, right? We're sort of all condemned to die. There's a great piece. You were filming this during the LA fires. And there's a great piece C.S. Lewis wrote in 1948 about the atomic bomb. And he's like, why are you so upset that the scientists have found yet another way to kill you when you're all condemned to death? And if you were in the 16th century, the plague visited London almost every year. And the Scandinavian, the Vikings could come at any moment and slit your throat. Like, he's like, still, we're in the age of cancer, heart disease, car accidents. Yeah. It's like, if the bomb comes or the fire comes, let it find us doing thoughtful things, like talking to our kids. Or
did he have I kind of heard that he might have had some depression issues.
He had depression. He lost his wife.
Yeah.
In fact, he wrote one of my favorite books of his called A Severe Mercy, which is the grief he went through and losing his wife. It's a beautiful, sad book.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think you'll like it. Anyways, back to you. Did you ever think you had ADD?
Oh yeah.
Tell me.
I'm even in this conversation, I've noticed how calm and still, and I could probably run circles around you, just all my things I got to say. And I'm observing that. I'm like, hey, Danny, follow the lead right here. But in my mind, that's ADD, right? Attention deficit disorder, because I mean, my brain is like, pew, pew, pew. I'm all these places and I want to get all this information out to you. But I'm noticing the calmness. I'm like, well, he doesn't have ADD. I think I have ADD.
Well, I just noticed some. So in the checklist, trouble sustaining attention, easily distracted, problems completing projects. I gave you a whole bunch to do ahead of time and you did it at the last minute. And I'm like, oh, because I was like so prepared. And I'm like, where are my checklists? And
that's me.
And they're like, the last minute.
Drives my team crazy. People who work for me.
Better brain, better life. Better brain, less stress on our loved ones.
Yes.
Okay. I always see people in 4 big circles. So it's not you have scrupulous OCD, take Lexapro. Although we might talk about that. I always see people in 4 big circles. It's like, well, what's going on in your brain? And most psychiatrists never look. So last year, there were 340 million prescriptions written for antidepressants, and nobody looked at their brain. And that's insane.
Yeah, that was the one thing that I thought was unique about your approach is that I've told a few people what I'm doing and they go, wow, that makes a lot of sense. Like it's eye-opening, but yet it's not like standard for.
Right. And people call me crazy and I'm not crazy. So the first big circle and the first week of medical school at ORU, the dean came in our classroom and drew these 4 big circles on the white. He said, never think of your patient as their diagnosis. Think of them in these 4 circles. So the first one is biology, what's going on in your brain and your body. The psychology, how are your thoughts? What's your development like? The social circle, it's like, what's going on in your life now? It would not surprise anybody well-trained that things got worse when your wife died, because clearly traumatic. And it's the brain you bring into the trauma that often determines how you handle the trauma.
Dang.
And so, as we think about the LA fires, who's going to develop PTSD? A lot of people, but often people who brought trauma into that traumatic event.
That's a whole bar you just dropped right there, because I've noticed my ability to cope with, since it's been like one trauma after another. I love how you put that, because you put the words exactly what I would feel at times. Like I can't handle anything else. Like that anything else is going to break me in this moment, because so yes, I digress, but that's a great way to put it. You're bringing a traumatic brain to a traumatic situation. That's not which is why when I take lorazepam, it's because, dude, I was like, it's time to check out. Pop a pill and just fall asleep.
And then there's a spiritual circle, which is ultimately why you care. And for whatever reason, that dominated you. So it was probably a combination of all these things. That you had a vulnerable biology, as we'll see, because I think you wrote your grandfather had OCD.
My dad.
Your dad.
Possibly grandfather, don't know, because I didn't never get to ask.
So somebody in your family and a child might have tendencies.
Yes.
So there's some genetic vulnerability. And then if you were not raised in a religious family, it might have come out in other ways. It just came out in that way because God became really important.
Yes. And just to clarify, my dad had the same thing, scrupulosity, but even more so had no words for it.
Right.
He just had these thoughts, these blasphemies that go through his mind, freaked him out. He'd have to leave. My mom had 6 kids, and my dad and mom had 6 kids. He had to go to my grandparents' house. My grandfather pastor, and they'd have to just try to work through it because it would just take everything away. But I didn't get to find this out for years later, which is interesting. Poses a question, and I love my dad, and hope he doesn't hear this because it's. But I think about I wonder how did you not recognize that in me as a kid? Maybe he did, and he just did his best he could,
And
because
maybe it triggered him that he felt shame about it or was anxious.
Because as a kid, when I would have those thoughts, I'd go to my parents' room, I'd wake up my dad, and I'd tell Dad, wake up. So he'd come to my room, wake him out of a dead sleep. And I'm like, Dad, I have these really bad thoughts. I don't want to think them, but what are they? No, I don't want to tell you. So I would never tell him. And so what he would do is just give me Philippians 4:8. These are the things to think on. So I think he tried, but I was a vault. So I found out, we've now had discussions in my 30s and 40s about how he had the same thing and how he worked through it. And,
Well, and maybe the reason you had it is you would share the pain and help thousands of people.
That's the hope.
All things work together for good.
That's a life
Not
verse too.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, that's a life verse. But all things work together for the good. And
For those who love the Lord. Yeah. So not for everybody, but I was talking to somebody recently. It's like, I would have changed this and I would have changed that and I would have changed this decision and then I wouldn't be me. And I'm sort of okay with me.
Okay, maybe I need to get a little bit. I probably, here's my truth. The truth about how I feel about myself is that I would probably change some things. Because part of what I think about myself.
But then you might not be you.
Maybe that's a good thing. No, edit. I'm just joking. Sorry, I do like myself. If anyone thinks I don't like myself, I do. I just would have made some better decisions. So, have you ever heard of the book, Feelings Buried Alive Never Die? Basically, I read part of this book because I did a lot of reading.
Feelings Buried Alive Never Die. I like that.
And she talks about in this book how you're basically born with everyone's born with either a fear kind of disposition or a love disposition. And basically, there's only 2 really ways of how, basically, how you talk about, they talk about generational curses, right? How you're more predisposed in your bloodline. If there's fear, you're more predisposed, or alcoholism or whatever. I think fear has been in ours. So even as a young kid, whether you realize or not, you're making choices, even if you don't know you're making choices. So when you're making choices towards fear, it just kind of builds that fear thing. I'm not saying she said that, but that's kind of what I pulled away from that book. Does that make sense? I think my disposition, instead of just being oh, I'm loved and okay, it was something wrong with me.
Sort of what Einstein said. You have to decide, is the world for you or against you?
Dang.
And let's look at your brain.
Okay.
So we do a study called brain SPECT imaging. SPECT is a nuclear medicine study that looks at blood flow and activity. It looks at how your brain works. And it basically shows us 3 things: good activity, too little, or too much. And then our job is to balance it. If it works too hard, we want to calm it down. If it doesn't work hard enough, we want to stimulate it. This is what a healthy brain looks like. The images on the left, we're looking at the outside surface. The top left, we're looking underneath the brain. The top is the front. The bottom is the back. And it should just be full, even, and symmetrical. Temporal lobes that I want to look at, they're right here. When you think of religiosity, I think of that. Here we're looking from one side, down from the top, full, even, symmetrical. Color doesn't matter, it's just the shape side. Now here, the color does matter. Blue is average activity. Red is the top 15%. White is the top 8%. So white's like the super active, which should be here in the cerebellum. We're going to see for you that's not the case. You have a beautiful brain.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a little bumpy.
Sound like my wife.
But everybody's got it. It's sort of like you're 40 and you have some wrinkles.
Oh.
When I see your brain compared to so many other brains we've seen, basically, I think your brain's really healthy. Okay. You might have had a concussion or so in the past. You can see your temporal lobe here It's a little smaller than this side. But I'd take that brain. I'm like not worried at all about it.
Okay.
Busy here, calm here.
And the calm, that part, you said the calm, what part is that brain?
So this is a part of your brain called your anterior, or the front, cingulate gyrus, part of the suffering circuit in the brain. And it's sort of the brain's gear shifter. Lets you go from thought to thought, move from idea to idea, be flexible, go with the flow. It's like you have a little mouse in your head that's on an exercise wheel and it can't get off. And many people get it stoned to just shut it up or drink or use lorazepam to calm that thing down. And then here, area called basal ganglia, insular cortex, these are all part of the suffering circuit in the brain. And yours is just too busy. So we want to calm it down. And I told you about the temporal lobe, especially the right temporal lobe, which is right here. It's busy. So the fact that you're deeply spiritual, that's a good thing. But you've been obsessed with it for way too long. And the hardware has pushed you to suffer. And if we calm the hardware, balance the hardware, you are going to feel so much better. And if I teach you how to kill the ants, how to direct your mind to help you rather than hurt you, you have to have the hardware that will learn that. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
So think of it hardware like software. My hardware is too busy. It doesn't let me shift properly. Balance that, you're going to be so much happier. And when you get in a state, this is probably worse.
So that's already not good, but it probably gets, you're saying.
No, this is great news because it helps us explain why you suffer. So we can balance this.
Right, because you're saying there's too much activity, right?
I'm saying, yeah. So we're going to calm it down.
So if you would have saw me last year, it would have probably lit up even more.
Right.
Wow.
And the team knows, I always talk about the diamond pattern. Connect these dots, it looks like a diamond, and that's past trauma. And thinking you're going to hell, that's traumatic. If you care, right? If you believe
right.
and you care, you start to hate yourself.
Yeah.
That's traumatic, especially if it happens year after year after year after year. And then you believe God's going to heal your wife and she dies, you then attack yourself.
Yeah.
Like if I didn't do that, maybe this wouldn't have happened.
Yeah. Absolutely. That is a correct reading. I think the years of me trying to balance this in a hidden place, and then, I don't know, I could tell you this, the strength I had in my teens and in my 20s, I started losing in my late 30s and 40s to balance all this. You know what I mean? You kind of lose the fight a little bit, which is why I feel like that year and a half ago, I would start waking up and just like, this is shameful to say because I just would wake for a lot of mornings last year in 2024. I woke up with such a heaviness and didn't know how to approach the day. And I loved when that all stopped. And I was like, I'm waking up hopeful again. But it's really difficult to manage that part. When you wake up, you want to be well, you don't know how to get well. You want to live happily, but you don't know how to be happy again. It's almost like you said, the mind had programmed the physical brain or whatever it is
or your physical brain was busy. It manifested with the OCD.
Mm.
And then you're attacking yourself because you can't fix it. But it's like attacking yourself because you couldn't fix type 1 diabetes.
Right.
It's ridiculous, right? From a rational standpoint, you can't control it.
But you're just so mad at yourself because you want to be better. You know, it's a vicious cycle.
But there was a missing piece, your brain. Balance your brain, balance your life.
Amazing. I love that.
I think from a diagnostic standpoint, I agree. From a brain perspective, your brain works too hard. And so my job is to calm it down. So I want to get some labs on you, and especially looking at the panda thing. I have a supplement I love called Happy Saffron. It's our number one. So I did a post recently on saffron versus Lexapro. So Lexapro is an SSRI.
Right.
And I think most psychiatrists, after they talk to you for an hour or two, they put you on Lexapro.
Right.
And it's not a bad idea. It's not the first thing I think of.
Sure.
I think, let's see if we can do it naturally with saffron. It's got saffron, zinc, and curcumin. So you're already taking turmeric. You don't need to do that anymore. It's in it.
Okay.
400 milligrams, highly potent. Take 3 of them a day. I want to give you our multiple vitamin fish oil and a brain boost to help your memory be even better. And then add Neuralink, because it'll help calm your brain even more.
What is that?
It's great. And it could be great for your son. I have thousands of children who take it because it just helps balance
it's
their
a vitamin.
brain. It's a supplement.
A supplement.
5-HTP, which is the serotonin precursor. GABA calms down the noise. And tyrosine to help you focus.
Okay.
And your son, who you're concerned about, is how old?
He's 7. And I'm also concerned about the 5-year-old. My 11-year-old, who noticed him first, I feel like he's way better. I'll do checkups on him. How's your thoughts? Any recurring thoughts? But I'm noticing my 2 sons, my 7 and my 5-year-old, that I'm like, all right.
Yeah. So for you, I'd actually take 4 twice a day. For them, I'd do 2 twice a day. But you can go online, and I have a brain health assessment, brainhealthassessment.com. Take it and then just send me their results.
All right.
And let's be friends, right?
Yeah.
You did this for us. I think of me as somebody on your team.
Sure. Appreciate that.
And you might even do EMDR. EMDR is a specific psychological treatment for trauma.
I'm interested in that one. I was closed off to that one years ago, but I'm like really interested in that one.
It's so interesting. I did it with Paula, and I have Paula's before and after brain. It's like calmed everything down.
Wow.
It was really cool. So
yeah, I would like to do some EMDR for sure.
Questions?
No, I think this is great.
So we will actually give you the supplements for like 6 months.
That's awesome.
And so when you need more, just email Kim.
Okay.
You met Kim, right? My assistant.
Yeah.
Yeah. And me. I want to hear from you like every couple of weeks.
Okay.
And, we'll check in as we need to do.
I love that. Thank you so much.
Are you excited to optimize your brain and help the brains of those you love? Do you want to prevent or treat memory problems, anxiety, or depression? Do you want to be happier? That's why I created Amen University, to take what I've learned over the last 45 years and help you have a better brain, a better mind, and a better body. You can take courses like our 30-day happiness challenge, which was shown in research to increase happiness by 32% in just 30 days, or memory rescue, or overcoming anxiety, depression, trauma, and grief, or healing ADD at home in 30 days, and much more. We also have professional courses and courses for kids, including Brain Thrive by 25, which was found in independent research to decrease depression and improve self-esteem. And as a special offer just for our listeners, you can save 20% on your next course. Visit amenuniversity.com and use the code Podcast 20. If you like this week's episode, please make sure to leave us a review on iTunes or Spotify. And follow me on Instagram or TikTok at Doc Amen and Tana at Tana Amen.